Before I start this video, if you haven't checked out my review of Fire Pro Wrestling on the Game Boy Advance, definitely check it out before watching this review. Why? Because Kevin Nash said so.
Move. Go. Go.
So after 10 years of the Fire Pro Wrestling series being exclusive to Japan, we've had the two Game Boy Advance games released in America. However, we wouldn't get another Fire Pro until 5 years later. The third installment in the American Fire Pro Wrestling series is called Fire Pro Wrestling Returns and was released for the PlayStation 2 in 2007. However, the Japanese version was released in 2005, 2 years prior to the American release. And unlike the American version of Fire Pro 1 and 2, this one kept the original Japanese name. So how much better is it compared to its GBA predecessors? Let's find out. So once again, you see a ton of modes and features on the menu screen. I'll get to them in a moment, but right now, let's look at the gameplay. Like all its predecessors, Fire Pro Wrestling Returns uses the timing-based grappling system, which means you gotta press a button as soon as both wrestlers lock up and press only once. If you see my Fire Pro Advance review, you already know what I'm talking about. However, the button layout is changed obviously because of a different controller. Square is your weak grapple / strike, X is your medium grapple / strike, Circle is your strong grapple / strike, Square plus X is your special grapple / strike, and Triangle is your running / Irish whip grapple. Everything else should be pretty simple and straightforward, but if you still need help, just read the manual or look up a guide on the internet. And once again, you have a shitload of moves to use. This time there's even a lot more than ever before. More on that later. They also added cool entrances for the wrestlers in the game. Check them out. They may not have the eye candy like SmackDown vs. Raw or WWE 12, but they're still nice to look at. And remember, this is a game that favors excellent gameplay over pretty 3D graphics. And I know you're used to seeing entrances like this. And like its predecessors, Fire Pro Returns has plenty of different match types to choose from. This time, however, it's a little different. Instead of having an electric cage match, you have a standard cage match. That may sound like a downgrade at first, but at least you can climb to the top of the cage and do high-flying moves. Fortunately, there is a mode similar to the electric cage match, and that is barbed wire death match. Now, one thing you'll notice about this match is that your opponent will prevent you from Irish whipping him to the ropes. This means you'll have to wear him down with your weak and medium grapples first, and then Irish whip him to the ropes, causing an explosion when they touch it. This makes the match more realistic and more fun to play at the same time. And yes, like before, they have massive explosions and they're even better than ever before. There's also a landmine deathmatch which was originally introduced in Fire Pro Wrestling D on the Sega Dreamcast, but since that game was never released outside of Japan, it's a new feature for the American installments. In this match, you can toss your opponent outside the ring and they'll land on a wooden barbed wire table that causes an explosion. And on the turnbuckles, depending on the settings of the match, you'll see more wooden tables with either barbed wire or fluorescent. I actually prefer the fluorescent because you can grab one and smack your opponent with it. Gruesome fighting is also back as well as the cage, but it has more than 8 sides to get around the UFC copyright. This is much better than having a standard ring like in Fire Pro Wrestling 2. Other modes include S1 Rules Match, which is boxing and or kickboxing when you only win by knockout, SWA Rules Match, and of course there's Battle Royal, Tournament, and so on. Wanna know how big the roster is this time around? Well, just look at it! The roster is absolutely ginormous! So many different wrestlers to choose from. New Japan, All Japan, Noah, AAA, Japanese Women's Wrestling, MMA Japanese fighters. There's even a good chunk of famous non-Japanese wrestlers like Sting, Bret the Hitman Hart, the Road Warriors, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Terry Funk, Abdullah the Butcher, Rikishi, Jeff Jarrett, AJ Styles, Vader, Bam Bam Bigelow, and even Andre the Giant. Their list goes on and on and on. Now of course they had to change the names due to copyright reasons, but thankfully you can change their names in edit mode. And if you're not satisfied with the default roster, you can always create your own in edit mode as well. In this edit mode, they've expanded greatly by not only being able to create a wrestler and your own wrestling organization, you can also create your own rings, logos, and referees. This is the best feature of Fire Pro Wrestling Returns because combined with all the excellent controls, gameplay, and matches you can choose, you can basically create whoever the fuck you want to create, and I mean anybody and everybody. And when you're creating a wrestler, you can literally give him anything. So many different attires, so many different looks you can give your character, and over 1,000 moves to choose from, and up to 500 slots of wrestlers you can make. Not even WWE games can compete with this shit. I bet your mind is pretty blown away right now. And this is a 2007 PS2 game, mind you. But even with all these great things you can do, my advice is to look up a guide on how to do all these things because you're going to be confused as all hell like I was when I first got this game. The hardest part for me was trying to create a logo. But if you want creative wrestlers and you don't want to deal with the messy interface, you can always download edit packs off the internet, which is very easy to do. The most notable sites to download edit packs is fireproclub.com. Here you can download various wrestlers, logos, and rings based off WWF, WWE, WCW, ECW, TNA, NWA, AWA, you name it. These were all made by members of that site and they did a wonderful job making these wrestlers. There are also other sites you can check out like cause.ws and my favorite edit pack page right here. But if you want to look for more edit packs elsewhere and not satisfied with these, just remember, Google is your friend. To download edit packs, two things are required first: Action Replay Max and a flash drive. Some Action Replay Max discs come with a flash drive, but if you bought one with the disc alone, then definitely buy a flash drive or use one that you already have but don't use very often. I also recommend using a second memory card. You can transfer edit packs with only one memory card, but that's most likely going to cost your already saved game because you need to erase and then transfer the edit pack. Plus you can keep downloading more edits with the second memory card since you can simply transfer them with your saved game. Here are the instructions. When downloading an edit pack, be sure to click the link that says .max. If it's a .max file, click save and save it to the root of your flash drive. If it's inside a zip folder, unzip and extract the file to the root of your flash drive. Once you insert your flash drive in Action Replay Max this, first go to Max Memory. Then go to My Devices. Then select the flash drive. Then under Device Contents, select the FPR file. Then select Uncrush and uncrush it to your memory card. And lo and behold, you have successfully downloaded your very first edit pack. Congratulations. You can also create a belt in this game, but you never see your wrestler come out with it, making this feature completely pointless. So with all those impressive features, does this game have everything a wrestling fan wants? For the most part, yes. However, there is one mode in this game that I really don't like, and that is Matchmaker. Basically, this is the same as General Manager mode from SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, except it's actually kind of fun. But even with that said, I still don't like this mode, and here's why. In Matchmaker, you book a series of wrestling events with a single wrestling organization, and you have to showcase some really good matches. You start off with 10,000 points, and you spend points on matches you set up. This mode wouldn't be so bad if they allowed you to use your created wrestlers, but sadly they don't. And that's the reason why I don't like this mode. That, and I prefer the story mode and the series of matches modes from the previous Fire Pro Wrestling games. But with all the other things in the game, this flaw can easily be ignored. And like almost all its predecessors, Fire Pro Wrestling Returns uses 2D sprites as opposed to most modern wrestling games like SmackDown vs. Raw, where they use highly detailed 3D polygons. But even as a 2D game, it still looks very impressive. The sprites look very sharp and detailed, and if they're based on an actual wrestler, you can immediately tell right away who they're supposed to be. People may bitch and moan about the fact that it's 2D and not up to PS2 standards, but who really cares? It gives the game a style of its own, honestly. Besides, I'd rather have a fun and enjoyable game with inferior graphics than a game with superior graphics but retarded AI and annoying bugs. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some people find the music in this game annoying, particularly the main menu screen. Personally, I kinda like it. But my favorite track in this game has to be Blue Thunder, because it sounds very powerful and gets you pumped up for the match. So that's Fire Pro Wrestling Returns, a candidate for the best wrestling game ever made. If you have a PS2 or a backwards compatible PS3 and don't have this game, pick this game up. Forget WW12. You can have many similar features and a much more fun experience at a much lower price. I bought my copy in Chinatown, New York City for around $15, brand new! I'm pretty sure it's a lot cheaper now. You can buy it used at GameStop for like $5 if you can find a copy. If not, you can still buy it online for a very cheap price. And you sure as hell are getting your money's worth, cause this ain't no shovelware game. I give Fire Pro Wrestling Returns a platinum. It's a damn shame that only 3 Fire Pro Wrestling games were released outside of Japan, because while all of these games are great, there were better ones in Japan. For example, Fire Pro Wrestling D on the Dreamcast, which I think is the best wrestling game ever made. But if you're courageous enough to import one of the Japanese Fire Pro Wrestling games, then by all means do so. If you can't afford to import, then I suggest sticking with the American ones. You can also play some classic Fire Pro Wrestling games on current generation consoles. If you have a PS3 or PSP, you can download Fire Pro Wrestling G off the Japanese PlayStation Network. To do this, first you need to create a Japanese PSN account. You can look up many tutorials on how to do it, but it's really easy to do. I'm not going to show you a tutorial at the moment. Second, you need to buy a Japanese PSN card. I recommend the 1,000 yen card, and then the best place to buy one is at playasia.com. Then after you register and log in and everything, at the PlayStation Store's home, select the third selection at the left side. Then select the second folder on the second column, which will take you to the genres. Then go to the sports folder, which is the first folder on the third column. And finally, keep scrolling down until you see Fire Pro Wrestling G. Then select the orange icon to download the file. And it should be worth noting that you can only play Japanese games with your Japanese account logged in. Otherwise, it won't work. If you have a Japanese Wii, Fire Pro Wrestling Combination Tag, Second Bout, and Legend Bout are on the Japanese Virtual Console. I tried to find a way to download Japanese Virtual Console games on an American Wii, but I couldn't find one. So if you do have a way of downloading Japanese Virtual Console games, then by all means check these games out. If you have an Xbox 360, yeah, you're fucked. Okay, first and foremost, I would like to apologize for the lack of live streams these past couple of weeks. The week before was for personal issues, and this week was because I was taking a lot longer to edit my Fire Pro Returns review than I expected. But I will make up for it by making a live stream tomorrow, which is Sunday, at 7:30. Sounds good. On Justin.tv once again. 7:30 Eastern Time. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, that is. Don't forget. And I will see you tomorrow night.